Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of A Mic on the Podium with me, Michael Seal. Today, I conduct a conversation with a Finnish conductor who has held multiple title positions in his home country, as well as being a very successful composer. He's also known as being a highly regarded conducting teacher and has been teaching at the Sibelius Academy in Helsinki since 1991. It's a great pleasure to welcome Atso Almila. Atso, it is wonderful to see you again, and I'm telling my listeners again because I first met you 2 weeks ago when I worked in Kuopio, which is where you live. How are you, sir? Are you well?
I'm well, yes. It's been quite a lot of... I'm doing parts for a composition we are performing next autumn, and I have to get them ready because this house is going to be renovated. So the whole house, all the apartments, and we have to get everything out. And
so you've got to do them now.
The cottage.
Yeah, you've got to do it now. I'm sure we will come on to composition later on, but I want to go right back to the beginning, Atso, and find out whether you came from a musical family, whether your parents were musical, and whether the trombone was the first instrument you played or whether you started on the piano. Well, how did music come into your childhood?
So, if I reveal that I was always interested in brass instruments, I just loved them. There was a recording I was listening when I was 2 years old, and that was the Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White by Ernie Englund's Swedish band, and the trumpet. I loved it, yes. But so my grandfather was a very good amateur pianist. He was a ship planner and engineer and stuff like this, but he played piano very well, and they had a lot of kids. My mother was the oldest one of them, so they listened to various kinds of music. So Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, and not Rite of Spring, but the Firebird.
Yeah,
I always listened to the Big Bang. And then I cried and left the room, and I wanted to hear it again and again and again, and cried and left the room. Yeah. But I also listened to a lot of Paul Anka and Harry Belafonte and such music. So growing up with these very young aunts and uncles was one surrounding, and my father, who was a journalist, loved also music, so that we had these 2 concerts coming from radio every week, Tuesday and Thursday. They were the Radio Symphony Orchestra and the Helsinki Philharmonic. And we listened to all of them, recordings, and there was a piano at home. And when I was 6 years old, I got to my first piano lessons. So first I concentrated on the piano, but I was a bit lazy, so I left when I was a teenager. And then I thought that I will not be a musician after all. And then I found in a closet at the school the trombone.
and it came to save you, the trombone.
Yeah, it came. Yes, I tried a little bit with the violin also. I took lessons, but I was really lazy. And I did some composing also when I was young. I was interested and encouraged to this. My piano teacher said that, yes, you can bring me to 8-bar long compositions, and I played them in the school when I was 7 and so on. Accepted and encouraged. But the school where I went to then, really after the preliminary stage, that was an experimental school. So we got really good possibilities to play in orchestra, sing in a choir, and also try like acting on stage and all this. So it was good surroundings. And there I found a trombone, and the school had an orchestra, and in the orchestra there sat a girl I was interested in. So I was really practicing hard, but I got also a good teacher, and then I understood that with this instrument, I probably get into the Sibelius Academy. And that happened in 1972.
Yeah. And your school orchestra, I mean, was that a place where already, I mean, because you're a trombonist, you're sitting there not doing very much and watching the conductor.
Yes,
yeah.
I had played for a couple of months the trombone, and then I played the coppelia. Pop, 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 pop. So it was real classical music we were playing.
Yeah,
It was a symphony orchestra.
And were you interested in what the conductor was doing at this stage, or were you still really concentrating on being the best trombonist?
This is sort of I have tried to figure out what was the real order of things. I went to the music camp, played trombone in a large symphony orchestra, and then with the roommates and everything, could you arrange for us this Burt Bacharach piece or something like this? And we had a little jazzy playing, and then I composed something small for the school orchestra. But I started to be interested in conducting my own music. The choir sang my Ave Maria, and the teacher let me conduct it. So it went like side by side with this composing thing, which was the way a couple of 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I've spoken to John Adams, James Macmillan, Sir George Benjamin. Often they would conducting their own music. And that's how it is. Even people who've worked in film, who've done arrangements for film or film scores, that they say, well, we want to do your stuff, but there's nobody to conduct it. You better do it. And that's how so many people start.
Yes, and it works like both ways. That with Jorma Panula, who was my teacher, and then later teaching myself, we have always asked the students, even though they are not composers, to write something small, like maybe a Christmas arrangement or something, and then conduct that themselves, because there happens a magical thing. That if you're a young conductor and you conduct Brahms, you concentrate too much on the question, me and Brahms. What am I in Brahms? What am I giving to Brahms, or Brahms to me? But when you work with your own writing, you just want to make it happen.
Yes.
And suddenly you understand how to do Brahms.
That's very
just to
true.
make it happen.
Yeah.
Like the opening of the Third Symphony. If you don't have a proper technique, it's quite difficult for the orchestra. You can mess it up totally.
Yes.
And the students have had possibilities like trying that with the Radio Symphony Orchestra in Helsinki. And then they wondered that this is such a good orchestra. Why can't that make it happen? They need your help.
Yes.
Like it would be your own composition. Just put it together practically. And then you can start. Yeah, sorry, I'm going far away from my youth.
No, it's fine, because as you know, from our chat over a dinner and a few beers a couple of weeks ago, we chatted for hours. So, I'll happily chat with you. You've just mentioned him. In 1972, you went to the Helsinki Sibelius Academy to study trombone and orchestral conducting with the great, and still around even now, in what is he, 93, 92 years old?
93 in August.
Yeah, 93
Next
in August.
August.
The great Jorma Panula. His name has come up many times, as has yours, because I've spoken to people who've been taught by you. What were those first experiences like with Jorma? And can you put your finger on how on his teaching style? Because some people have put their finger on it a bit, and others have gone, well, actually, I'm not really sure how he does what he does, but he does it brilliantly.
Yes, for many years I was thinking of calling him the man without method. But actually, there is a method.
Yeah.
He puts you in front of an orchestra and make them play. And if you have some troubles, we throw you some like life vest or something that you get, like throwing into water to swim. Let's see if you can swim. But when I went to the academy, so I remember, because I'm not pretty sure when I invented that I want to be a conductor or study conducting. So I have asked in the presentation for new students the new headmaster, who, by the way, accepted big band music to enter the Sibelius Academy also. And
Good.
of course, I played, which meant that I learned much more from syncope than the normal symphony orchestra player then. But I asked that how to become a conductor in this house. And Jorma had started right then, but he had been 1 year absent because he was conducting in Denmark, Aarhus, and he was coming back, and the headmaster explained that you have to also do the choir conducting studies. So I immediately went to the choir conducting class. And that's like a big part of my work also.
Yes, you've conducted 4 choirs, I've read. Yeah.
Yes, and one of the first works I was preparing with a real conductor who conducted a piece was The Dream of Gerontius, which had never been played in Finland then. So I got into this world very quickly. But so when I had asked about this conducting studies, so I first had to do a little bit this choir thing. And in 1974, after playing already in the orchestra, the Sibelius Academy Orchestra, and under Jorma's conducting, which I loved, I immediately understood what he meant. And there were many people who thought that he was too fast. So they didn't, playing in a symphony orchestra was not always so popular. You wanted to be a soloist, and then you had to be in the orchestra, so you were a bit lazy and you didn't follow this man who said that the first beat goes to hell, the second beat goes to restaurant, the third beat goes to the parliament house, and the fourth beat goes to heaven. Yeah. This is how he taught us these patterns. So I phoned him and I asked that, would it be possible? Nowadays, there are like 70 applicants and you choose from the videos and stuff. But that was, I just phoned him here. And what time have you been reading? And I said, the Rite of Spring. No, how does it go? Okay, yeah. And I said, yes, I have figured out how to beat it. Which was total bull. But so I had drawn little triangles everywhere.
Yes.
And so he invited me to the tests in 1974 May. And I remember Beethoven's Fourth, which I love. One of my favorites of the, and the little orchestra. And he accepted me, and then it started. The best years of my studies.
Well, it's like you say, it's no different these days. I work in the Conservatoire in Birmingham, and I've also conducted at the Royal College and the Royal Conservatoire in Scotland. There are still people who don't like playing in symphony orchestra, who think they're going to be soloists or quartet players. But you have to try and capture them somehow and say that anything I'm telling you, these skills are transferable into your quartet or your trio or into your life as a soloist.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like if you start to think about the orchestra music as a big-sized chamber music, you are already much nearer to the core, what is actually happening in the composer's mind when writing. There's a good example, I think, that if you think of the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, which is basically the same size of instrumentation as is Schubert's Four. Otherwise, a sinfonietta, but having 4 horns instead of 2 horns. So Tchaikovsky loved Mozart. And I think that lots of the performances of the symphonies are too like heavy and romantic, too slow tempo. He had good metronome markings for the 5th Symphony. And if you take them as he wrote and add nothing extra. So the symphonies become much lighter and more intimate and like a different kind of light.
It's very true.
Shown to the pieces.
It's very
so
true.
I think that we can always try to. There's another example of Paavo Värilund. You remember the name?
I've played for him many times and loved playing for him.
Yes, and the last series of the Sibelius symphonies he did with the European Chamber Orchestra, pretty much the size of orchestra that Sibelius himself had, about 50, 60 players, like the Kuopio Orchestra, something like we call this middle romantic size. And I had the luxury of interviewing him. I interviewed all the living previous Radio Symphony Orchestra conductors for Radio Orchestra's celebration year. So I asked him first, why was he so keen on doubling the woodwind solos in big orchestras? And he just said to me, well, you know, if you put two people to play the same time, they play better in tune. Okay, he doubled a huge amount of solo. But then with this European Chamber Orchestra, I asked, did you try to get like nearer to the original size of the orchestra of Sibelius? I said, we couldn't get any more players, he said. They didn't have economics.
Yes.
But that's very appreciated. That's serious on these symphonies.
So I'm guessing if you started with Jorma in 74 and you graduated in 79, that's 5 years of conducting lessons with Jorma.
Actually, it's not. I finished the extra subjects in 79. So my diploma concert was in 77 Christmas.
Yeah.
And with a very original program. There was one modern Swedish piece, one of my own compositions for brass instruments, and then a piece for choir and orchestra by a Finnish composer, Nils-Erik Fogstedt, who was previously the radio orchestra chief, then already passed away, but Jorma liked his music. And he should be played more, this Nils-Erik Fogstedt. But so I did this choir business all the time. So I had been appointed to chief conductor of the Sibelius Academy Great Choir. So I took that choir to my diploma concert with the orchestra. And then I worked already as a teacher in the academy. Jorma asked me to give some lessons to composers in conducting and so on. And with the choirs. I also had the Sibelius Academy chamber choir then. So at the side, I was making some missing subjects so that I got the markings. And in 79, I got my papers out. And there's a funny story because at the same time, also Esa Pekka got his papers. And we are sitting side by side in the 6th floor of the old Academy House because we had missed in the opening of our studies the form analysis oral examination. So after all these studies, we are waiting there for the lowest level examination, and we are afraid because we knew the teacher and he would be really, we had forgotten everything. And Esa Pekka went first. He came out after 1 minute and said, he asked me, what are the C major chord notes, tones? I told him, then said, okay, and he got out. And then I went in.
Yeah.
And there was another guy, there was a Finnish conductor, Kari Tikka, who just recently passed away. But we knew each other. And he was sitting with his teacher. And now what's the pure fifth to C? And I say, G. Does the board want to hear something else? No, said the Karitikka. And then I got the papers. And now the same time, Karitikka, the other member of the board, had been in my choir. Because also he was getting his papers, though he was a bit older than we. And besides, I'm 5 years older than Esa Pekka. But right 2 weeks or 3 weeks before, he had asked me that he has missed so many choir rehearsals, but can I still sign his study book? And I said, of course. So he got his papers because I signed his studies. And then
he gave
the three of us
gave you the
papers.
Yeah, they gave you the easiest question you could possibly be asked to pass your oral exam. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You mentioned, conducting choirs, and between 75 and 95, if Wikipedia can be trusted, you basically were a conductor of 4 choirs. There's one, before I go on to conducting orchestras, and the orchestras you've been conductor at, there is one competition noted in there, the fact that you were the joint winner of the Norrköping Nordic Conducting Competition in 1982.
Yes.
Was that one of these competitions where you won some engagements around Scandinavia, in Finland and Sweden, or what was the upshot of winning? And didn't you share it with Esa-Pekka Salonen? Is that right?
Yes. So if I remember correctly, first I went to the Malko competition, and I got the 6th prize because I messed up with the violin concertos. There were Prokofiev 1 or 2 with the Roman numbers, and I misread it, and I studied the wrong one, and
oops.
it was not the time of YouTube or anything, so no quick access to the correct one. And other things happened also in the Malko. If I tell them sometimes, that explains why I never conducted in Denmark. It has something to do with Carlsberg beer. But anyway, then came this Scandinavian competition, and Jorma wanted us to participate. There was Osmo Vänskä. There was we were working at the National Theatre with an operetta with Esa Pekka, and we drew sticks who would go to the competition and who would take care of the performances. And Esa Pekka sent me to the competition, and there we were with Jukka-Pekka, Osmo, and another Finn who was not Jorma's student. And Osmo was, for some reason, not advancing in the competition, was a little bit disappointed, but went immediately to Besançon and won that competition. So, all right.
All's well that ends well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So then Jukka-Pekka and me and 2 Danish guys, we were standing, there were 4 of us behind the door when the jury was making its decision, and we were wondering what will happen. First, this one very nice Danish guy asks us, why is it so that so many good conductors come from Finland? He was very polite. And then Jukka-Pekka said, we are not at all polite. We just say straightly how it is. And then Jukka-Pekka said that the winds liked me more, and I said that the strings liked you more. Jukka-Pekka was a wonderful violin player. And then we hear the jury's decision. The first prize was shared for 3 people because they couldn't decide. And that poor 4th guy, Danish guy, he was very he didn't get anything. And we shared the first prize. And then a little bit celebration and so on. Jorma was there. He was not, of course, a member of jury, but he followed the finals, and he was so pissed off of this decision that he gave us extra money to Jukka-Pekka and me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And then I started my trip home. And the Finnish jury member was an older conductor with the grey beard and the Paavo Rautio. And he said to me that personally, I like the Jukka-Pekka more than you, but now you must remember that you always present yourself as the winner of Norrköping.
Yeah.
First prize winner. But I was already working at the National Theatre, which was a drama theatre, not like opera, and only this trial of operetta, not even musicals. But I composed music there, and I participated in the artistic boards and so on. So it was almost 15 years a part of my life. So I said no to agencies, and I said I got my own telephone. I can organize the contacts. I had also some family life, and I didn't want to travel so much. So yes, I did a few concerts in Sweden, but they didn't lead to very much. I contacted Sweden later much more through some wind orchestras, like the Gothenburg Winds and then the Karlskrona, the Navy Orchestra. So not so much traveling and saying to the agents, no, I'm not so interested in this abroad businesses. So I did much more in Finland.
It's almost like you've read my little notebook that the listeners know that I have, because there's a whole list of places that you've been chief conductor, and they're all in Finland. And my next question, I'll list them now. You were chief in Tampere with the Philharmonic in Tampere for 2 years, 7 years at the Joensuu City Orchestra, though I think you did that job twice. 5 years as music director of Kuopio Symphony Orchestra. You've just mentioned the National Theatre of Finland, and then 2 spells as the chief of the Finnish National Opera. And then my next question was going to be, why did you not want to travel? And you've sort of mentioned it with your family and having a family life. And when we chatted 2 weeks ago, you said to me, I like my home life and I like the music in Finland where you live. I mean, is it something you look back on and think, I think I did the right thing? I mean, I know that you've been teaching at the Sibelius Academy basically since the day you graduated, on and off as well. So
yes.
There are ties to that.
Like my working career, now I'm retired, but the everyday work that ended taking care of the professorship. Yeah. So I followed Jorma's footsteps, and I was, for 6 years, I was the professor of orchestra conducting and orchestra teaching also, so planning the whole orchestra life of the Sibelius Academy. But Tampere was the first orchestra to ask. Finland has been a country like those days, even now, where the orchestras have much more direct contact to the decision making. So it's not like via the agencies and between the managers, but it's more like that the orchestra is choosing who they want. And Tampere was asking that would I come, and it was a short 2-year term, and there was a Romanian guy who was pissed off that he was not chosen. He was the principal guest conductor, and it all became quite a mess. And I said that I won't continue, don't worry. And we partied as friends, and then I made there many operas and concerts, and so we have been good friends. Yeah. But I went back to the theater. I went back to the theater and worked for many years there. Still. And this Joensuu was also like I was at the academy. I had been teaching, and there was a group of players from Joensuu who came as a sort of a diplomatic
Yes.
group, and they said that would I come to Joensuu and be the chief conductor. That was in 93. And I did till 2000. And that was quite a period because there were 2 times. There were 3 years, and then an option of 1 year. And then we felt that maybe it's a time to change. And I had already then started also in Kuopio. The towns are quite near each other. It's only 130 kilometers, so it was very easy to travel if necessary. And in 96, in my life, a big change. I fell in love with a girl from Kuopio and moved to Kuopio. And I've always lived in Helsinki, and now 27 years is coming in August that I moved to Kuopio, and I've never regretted this. So Joensuu then ended. Then later they asked me that if I would be an artistic advisor again, and then would I be a principal conductor again? And then the problems between the orchestra and the, how would I say, the city of Joensuu was not taking good care of the orchestra, and there was all kinds of things. And I stepped down, but I got this kind of a position as the honorary conductor. But then they did something so awkward that they sacked one player, and I couldn't accept it. And I said, I'm not coming back because you sacked this player. And I was later, because there was also, went to the court, and I was the witness for the player. So it's been a sad passage, but I had to raise my voice. I had to defend the player. And I miss that orchestra, but it's like now impossible.
Yes.
But with the Kuopio happened something wonderful. I had stopped in 2000, and then in 2007, the players came back to me and said, would you come back like as a second conductor? Like a home conductor. Yes. I live on the other side of the street. So why not? Yes. So since 2007, my name is all the time in the Kuopio list as a second conductor. And then there is Jorma, the honorary conductor. And now a new principal conductor, Eugene Tsigain.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So this has become, through these decades, a very dear orchestra to me. And I was earlier very much against that. I'm not going to play my own music in the orchestra that I conduct, but they have asked me to conduct my own music. So perfect.
You're very good at reading my next questions, even though you don't know what they are. I'm assuming that you have composed, 4 operas, as far as I could read on Wikipedia, various concertos, symphonies, I believe. I'm assuming you composed all the way through your conducting career. So you've been, pretty much a full-time professor and conducting 1 or 2 orchestras at the same time as a music director in chief, and also composed at the same time. You said you've retired now. I'm assuming from conducting. Do you still teach? And I know from the chat at the very beginning that you are still composing because you're doing the parts for a composition. Did they always run alongside each other? Were you always keeping yourself busy?
They did. At some point, some years, some stages of their life, maybe not so many gigs all the time.
Yeah.
The Finnish orchestras at the countryside, they don't do so many gigs as a big professional orchestra in Great Britain. So it's like maybe the deals are that you do, if you are chief, you do 8 concerts per year. If you are principal guest conductor, maybe 4 concerts. And when I was this honorary conductor of the Joensuu Orchestra, I did 2 concerts per year, and maybe something else. And so I've not been so busy as all around traveling conductors and who still have an orchestra of their own. So there's been plenty of time also for composing. And the professorship started in 2013, but before that, I had already sort of stopped the everyday relation to the Sibelius Academy. I had a job there earlier, a permanent job, but I didn't, after a scholarship I got for composing, a 5-year state scholarship, I didn't come back to the academy. I visited. I have all the time been there and teaching there 1 week, 1 project or so. But then 2013, when Leif Segerstam left, I was chosen as his successor. And it was after first year, I actually had to apply for the job because there was lots of talk that too many invitation professors, so that you have to really, well, I got an extra year, like it was a 5-year agreement, but it started only after the application. So I said already then that in 2019, I will be 66 years old. So I will then retire, and they had good time to negotiate. And as we know, Sakari Oramo was interested.
Yes.
And now he's the professor, and he cooperates quite a lot. So I still do gigs for the Sibelius Academy, and I compose a lot. I compose both chamber music and orchestra music. Basically what people ask me to do.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think I would have enjoyed being one of your students based on the 2 chats that we had a couple of weeks ago. You know, I was talking about the fact that I'd studied briefly with Jorma, and I said, you know, don't watch some of the things I do. And afterwards we chatted about some of the things I did technically, and you gave me some wonderful advice about how to conduct in one, and also rather complimentary about why I conducted in one, the reason, you know, because I'm a string player and how string players prepare the bow. Your use of metaphor, you know, we've subsequently emailed each other and talked about, you know, string players conducting techniques and bowings and which string you should conduct on, which I thought was a brilliant metaphor. I think I would have enjoyed being one of your students. Sounds like
there are a couple of masterclasses in summer if you're interested.
Well, I'd love to come and watch them, frankly. I mean, I really would, because I enjoy teaching myself. And I enjoy watching other teachers who you know, I respect. And, you know, having chatted to you, greatly respected what you said because you picked up on it so quickly. Was that always something that you've used a lot, the metaphor? You know, you're talking about conducting in one, but imagine hitting a bass drum with a soft beater. And it was a wonderful metaphor and picture, and really helped. You know, because I don't remember Jorma very much talking in metaphors. I mean, I would imagine that must come from you.
Actually, the round beat is Jorma's idea.
Right. Yeah.
That comes from him, but me adding like this, what it should feel like.
Exactly.
Coming from that, you always get advantage of your own instrument, even though the instruments are so different. So I might say to a student that who is a trombone player that what does a crescendo look like with your trombone? And it looks like nothing.
Yeah.
You cannot see it.
No.
But with the trombone, you might be giving a cue to the guy sitting next to you if you are a leader. Yes. So you get always this kind of what the concertmaster does with the neck and the violin, and then if people go very much like up and down, but don't notice it. So thinking more like the bow movement on a string, you get this kind of intensity also. There's lots of power in a slow speed.
Yes.
Which is hard to get. I was I was very tall, like much over 6 feet, and only 64 kilos. So I was like very like thin when I was young. And to get like this kind of earth,
Yes.
power of earth to this kind of that demanded lots of thinking about mimics. And maybe also that Jorma gave me often, could you give some basics to these guys? Could you take care of these composers? Would you come to teach with me to this masterclass and you can take care of those beginners? So I had to explain very carefully to the beginners about like one thing that I don't think is being talked about enough is that when we talk about preparations, that we want to prepare the beat, how loud, how fast, what character, but we can also prepare with the rebound where you are going to beat next. Like people, of course, in Mozart, it's that the first beat goes down, you're beating in 3, and then the second beat goes a bit to the right side, if you're not left-handed, and then back and up. But if it's like something where you really need to show in slow tempo that you are going to beat to the right side. So of course, you take with the rebound, you take the speed from the left side. So that as a trombone player in the back row of the cinema theater on the Saturday night, whatever, so sitting there and watching the conductor who is doing perfectly in 3 or 4, changing all the time, maybe it's Shostakovich that we are playing. So if he uses the rebound direction to show where he's, I see immediately from the bottom of the first beat if this goes in 3 or in 4. But if he bounces upwards and then moves his hand to the proper, I get the information a microsecond later.
Yes. Yeah.
If it goes in 4 or 3, and I'm counting bars. So these kinds of things I started to figure out for the beginners, and now it seems that people are always interested about those. And then the other thing that is good from a trombone player's view is that how well a conductor takes care of everyone in the orchestra, not just the front desk players. So do I get the information I need from the conductor? Do I understand what he's doing next? And if it involves me or not? Questions like, or have I just taken an inhale and he stops because he's a pianist?
Absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah.
But when talking about this, like how interested you are also in teaching, so there have been this with Jorma, maybe in the 80s, 90s, that we have had master classes together.
Yes.
And then there is a marvelous guy called Luke Dolman, who teaches in Adelaide. He's a violinist too, and he was our student.
Yeah.
And he has conducted quite a lot in Europe, and in Helsinki, they liked him very much. He phoned me one year and said that, would you come to teach in the Czech Republic with me? Bohuslav Martinu Orchestra. For 4 summers, we had master classes together.
Yes.
First of all, we divided the group, and then we changed places. Then we took care of the videos together, and then we had lessons together. So that's part of the idea that the conductor is not about me, but it's more about making everything function.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
I couldn't agree more.
Getting this, like I feel that what has been so nice with you after meeting only once and then now again is that we can talk about conducting as almost like giving advice to each other would be okay. I remember many, many years ago when Esa Pekka was young, and there's one solution to one place in the Sibelius Fifth Symphony. And he said to me, I was actually playing trombone. It was our school orchestra 100-year jubilee or something, and I was playing trombone. He was conducting, and I only put the trumpet to do this, but don't tell anybody. And I thought, why not tell anybody?
Why not?
If there's a good trick. So this kind of sharing information is not so usual in some parts of the orchestra. Conductors, when they meet, they talk about good food and good wine, but maybe not so much. Now, I think it's changing, but previously, like about editions and stuff, and corrections and giving tips to each other.
It was part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast to a degree, was to point out that, you know, we don't just all fly around in business class eating in Michelin-starred restaurants at all. And the fact is that we all have to do the same thing. We all have to study a score. But actually, by connecting with other conductors, maybe we can give each other advice that, you know, in the past rarely happens. And I haven't got the feeling occasionally that the information was being withheld. I wasn't being told things.
Like
it was a secret. I shouldn't be giving you my secrets. But I remember the first time I ever had a lesson with Sakari Oramo. And part of the lesson was on the Sibelius Violin Concerto. He gave me some incredible tips, because he said, well, this is what we always do in Finland, because of we think it's overbalanced. And they're the sort of things that I pass on to my students now, the things that I remember Berglund saying in rehearsals to us. And I went home and jotted things down. And when I was playing in the orchestra, you just think, well, that's gold dust. Why would you want to keep that from other people just because you've learned it or got it from somebody else? Pass it on. I mean, that's the whole point. With my people on my Patreon page and also my private pupils, I pass it on. I tell them, these are the sort of things that you should know, and these are the sort of things that I know that orchestras like you to do, and these are the things that I know orchestras hate that you do. So don't do it. That's important. Yeah.
And then there's when you mentioned the Sibelius violin concert, also like, I do some balancing because it needs some stuff needs to be heard, but some of it is already written correctly.
Yes,
but it's not taken properly care of it. It's right before the cadenza when the orchestra vomits this.
Yes.
Oh, my dog was frightened. It's 15 years old.
All right.
But anyway, this vomit has the brass starting from mezzo forte. And then it has all the strings doing in fortissima, which you never hear.
No.
And at some performances, I have added this possibility to add the second trumpet to do that. Nobody notices, but it comes a little bit more. And then just trying to, because of course every conductor does a huge beat for that.
Yeah, of course.
But even that can be solved.
Yes.
Not beating such a lot. And maybe taking it just a bit slower so you hear that thing from the strings.
It's very true. I have an 11th question, Atso, which I don't know whether I told you about. And I wonder what your answer is going to be, because I remember when I studied with Jorma all those years ago, I think it was 2005 or 2006, 2007, I've just looked at the poster on the wall. He saw my scores and they were littered with red, blue and black markings, which he hated it. Yeah. And the 11th question is this: when you come to learn a new score, and you said you're retired, so let's go back a few years and imagine you've got a new score in front of you. Did you sit down and learn it with your inner ear and start at the beginning, or did you go big to small? But the question I always ask is about, what markings are you a red, blue, and black, or do you keep it very clean? And I'm assuming because you are, one of Jorma's students, that your markings are very much less than maybe mine would be.
It might be so, and then I only use a pencil which is erasable.
Yeah.
And it has become such a technique that first I try to figure out, maybe we should be talking about modern music.
Yes.
You cannot find on YouTube anything, but it's a first performance coming. So how to beat? So that I know that there are no surprises. Some editions are so that you don't see in the end of the page if it goes to 3, the next page.
Over the page, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so that my chart for the beatings, not like lines for beating, but all the numbers, I see them properly.
Yes.
That I want to do. And with the pencil marking, of course, the pencil marking is something that you will remember better. It's why we should still keep in school, like writing with hand on the mathematics lesson, because then we would remember better. Motorics,
very true.
It makes it easy. But I try to read then what surprises me, like I didn't notice that maybe the tuba had like 10 minutes of not playing, and then the tuba is entering. So I might mark a little marker for me that remember the tuba.
Yes, yeah.
So as practical as I can.
Practical things,
and, yes, and then if there are some, of course, a score where all the instruments are the same lines all through the score, then you don't have to mark so much the instruments. But if it changes, like the opening of the Rite of the Spring, then I try to first just read and memorize as much as is possible, and then use as less markings as is possible, so that I have the feeling that I'm actually reading the music and not my notes.
Yes, yeah.
But I understand this coloring system if it's logical. If you always color the trumpets with the same color, like that's very much a Russian system. They have this kind of angles, or that they can see from far away. Oh, yes, yeah, that's the trumpets. There's an angle like this. So
yeah, I mean, I use 3 colors, and I always use them for the same thing. So anything to do with my hands, so whether it's speeding up, slowing down, or the number of the beats in the bar is in red, anything to do with articulations and dynamics is in blue, and anything practical, like you've just said, giving a cue for an instrument that's not played for 10 minutes, or a little note for a pizzicato or something, I just use normal pencil. I always use the same colors for the same thing, so I can open my score and I know that the red will pop off the page, the blue will pop off the page, and the black is there just for the little details that I need. Yes. And like you said, when I write these things in, it helps me remember the music. It helps me remember the studying.
And now I would imagine that first of all you have to have your own scores, because
yes, you do.
You cannot put colors to entire material.
No.
Often.
When I use higher material, I only use one color system, and I generally tend to spend more time on it, because I can't just resort to my blues and reds. But then that concert you came to 2 weeks ago, there was a jazz cello concerto in the second half by Misha Muller-Vabado, where I had the decisions. Yes, which you heard. I had the decisions of how long certain things could be. And then there were other moments when the decision was taken by Matthew Barley, the soloist. And without my red and my notes in there, it just helped me realize that this is my decision or his decision. Or it just helped it come off the page and pop off the page. And it helped me guide my way through it. What would you do if an orchestral player spoke to you aggressively or tried to take over the rehearsal? How would you react if a soloist had a memory slip and needed your assistance? In recent weeks, I've started a new series on my Patreon page called What Would You Do in This Situation?, where topics like these are discussed using real-life encounters. It started a lot of discussion and is proving hugely popular with my subscribers. Subscribing is very easy, and you will gain access to articles, tour diaries, over 30 hours of interviews and bonus mini-episodes, as well as much more. And if you subscribe annually, you'll get a discount and a further discount if you're a student. All of this can be found at patreon.com/a mic on the podium, and from just £5 a month you gain access to this ever-growing resource on conductors and conducting. That's patreon.com. Details and links to the page are in the show notes attached to this episode. Now, the all-important 10 questions with my guest, Atso Almila. Atso, it is time for the much talked about and much fabled 10 questions, which every conductor has answered from the very first episode with Andrew Litton. And I always start with, what sound or noise do you love, and what sound or noise do you hate?
I remember the summers of my youth, and I must say that I love mild wind sounding in the tree leaves. Preferably there's water, lake water, and sunshine, but the wind.
Very Finnish scene. Trees,
also,
water.
Yes, and birds.
Yeah.
Birds. And then what I hate, when I was a child, I was afraid of big bangs, and like I ran off if there was a revolver shown, a toy revolver with this.
Oh yeah, toy gun. Yeah.
And steam engine. There was a railway near our home, and steam engine. This whistle.
Yeah.
When I was 4 to 4 years old, I just started to cry with the noise. But then later I started to love the noises. But one I hate is the leaf blower. You know that they and then this raking leaves sound that I like.
Yeah.
They are like hell machines, these leaf blowers.
I was here the other day learning a score, and marking up a score, and because it was a warm day and my study's at the top of the house, I have a Velux window just above me here, which I open up so I can let my cigarette smoke out and I can feel a bit of a breeze. And somebody was jet washing their patio, and they took 4 hours to do it. The sound of a sort of, an electric motor running the jet washer. I wanted to go up outside and just cut through the cable and just, it must be clean by now. Stop it. During the day, and leaf blowers are the same. Oh yeah. I'm with you. And what a finish! Having been to the first time recently to Kuopio, one of the joys was we had an hour's break. And in fact, it was slightly longer than that. And so close to that hall is a little place where you can go and sit right down by the water. You're quite near some trees. It's such a peaceful place. Absolutely beautiful. So your answer doesn't surprise me. And I was drawn to the water every day I was there. I wanted to go and walk down to the water's edge, either there or the other side of the city. It's such a beautiful, beautiful place. So yeah, not surprised.
I hope you come again.
I hope so too. I hope so, very much so. And if I had 24 hours free, I think I know what I would spend doing in it. But if you had 24 hours away from home, and I'm not sure how many of those you would have done because of the way you structured your career, but if you had 24 hours free, what would you spend it doing?
This is like at the weekend often. And I say that I love spending time with friends, having a meal. I cooked for them myself.
Yeah.
After spending time in the local market hall and buying the stuff. And then I would maybe, if I'm still awake, end the day with a good book.
Who would be your favorite conductor or conductors of yesteryear?
It's like, what's your favorite composer? It's like impossible, of course, impossible to answer, but my very good memories are with Arvid Janssons, who was Maris Janssons' father, because he visited our class several times teaching Jorma. asked him to come. And he was so clear in what his ideas of motorics were, and intonation, the basic, the practical things. And we saw how the Finnish orchestras loved him.
Yeah.
It was just wonderful. He was never angry. And he got so much happening in just the smallest of movements. And then the other one, I never saw live, but I had the tickets for his concert. There was Yevgeny Maravinsky.
Yes.
Because the legend was that from the backside, you didn't see anything there. He was working in front of him with small gestures, and his eyes and face. And luckily, there are now YouTube videos of his rehearsals and stuff.
Yes.
But I must admit that they were also via Jorma Panula.
Yes.
Talked about these guys.
Yeah.
So
tell
I
me
mentioned these two.
Yeah. Tell me, because I'm interested. Because I when I studied with Jorma, I was on the same course with a conductor called Ken David Mazur, the son of Kurt Mazur.
Yeah.
And the first time Ken David,
I haven't seen him. Yes.
Yeah. First time he stood up and conducted, all of us looked at each other and went, "My God, he conducts exactly like his dad."
Yeah.
Did Maris conduct like Arvid?
No.
Right.
He had the same. I never met him, but I've seen these Oslo concerts and stuff, and I think that there's the same kindness, same positive attitude, but I also felt that he's moving like much more,
right,
with his hands than his father. His father was quite round, built quite round, so he was as broad as he was high.
Okay.
And a long curly hair, light gray hair, and he was like a very tight package.
Right.
And Maris was much more longer arms and everything. So, not unclear, but still moving much more. Because Arvid Johnson said that if you remember what size of TVs were in the 70s, that everything you conduct should fit inside the TV screen.
Yes. Yeah.
All what you do, large movements and all, so you don't go overboard from the screen. But then he said that, but we have seen from the Finnish TV what kind of other movements people can make. And he talked about Okko Kamu and Leif Segerstad, who went behind their shoulders. And everything.
Yeah. Well, as you said, TV sizes in the 1970s were a lot smaller than you see them now. I mean, it reminds me of the Bolt, Sir Adrian Bolt used to say, you should only ever raise your arms above your shoulders or to head height once per piece, if not once per concert, which, that was the high point.
Have you heard from Jorma what he told about his teacher, who was Leo Funtek, who worked in the National Opera here, and he kept his left hand in his pocket,
right,
and took it out from the pocket only once during the Bruckner Symphony. So that meant that now we are approaching the climax.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's very similar, isn't it? I wonder, I know it's a very difficult question, and I've had one person famously refuse to answer it, but I think that was for a different reason. And who would be your favorite current conductor or conductors?
As you have said in this podcast, that we are not allowed to mention ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's actually philosophically a very interesting question, because I myself, if I see videos of me conducting, I usually just want to take that guy to lessons and start with the basics again. So I wouldn't choose myself.
Well, that's not the reason why I put it on the question when I send the email.
But
my God, Atso, I agree with you. I hate watching myself conduct, and I'd give myself such a telling off in a lesson. It's unbelievable. But the reason why I put it was partly as a joke, but also because there is this, thing from orchestral players that if you'd ask that question to a conductor, they'd all answer themselves, which is why I put it there.
But it would be really interesting to imagine who would mention themselves.
Well, exactly.
Maybe not Lorin Marcel, but around. I'm sorry, rest in peace. Yeah, but I chose two guys who are over 90 years old. The first one is Jorma.
Of course.
Because I started as a player in the orchestra, and I understood totally what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from him, watching him conduct. And I have seen, of course, there were lots of times when he was fighting with the orchestras and had not been good terms, and opened his mouth to say something which he had to apologize for later. But as an older conductor, he often visited also Kuopio.
Yes.
And many of the players said that was the best Sibelius Fort we had played. That was because he's so just what is necessary, nothing extra, and not losing orchestra style. So, and then there is this very deep musicality in him. He knows what he wants. And then the other, that's Herbert Blomstedt.
Yes.
And that's partly because we have become acquainted, because we have had this habit that when somebody like him visits Helsinki, we ask them to visit the conducting class.
Yes.
And teach. And what a man to share his. He was sitting in the cafeteria with the conducting students. They were going through editions, and everybody had questions. And he was so fatherly, nice to them, and the orchestras. They really value this wisdom that he has. Maybe the hands are not so good anymore, but it doesn't matter.
No.
He's wonderful.
Two brilliant choices. I'm not surprised about Jorma, obviously, but also Herbert Blomstedt's name's come up quite a lot. I think for some people because of his longevity and how he's still very sprightly at the age of 95 or whatever he is. But
he's in July he will be 96.
Yeah, and he's still, I saw pictures of him on social media only yesterday or the day before. But yeah, two brilliant choices, and absolutely wonderful. Number 6, Atso, is what is the hardest work you've ever conducted?
My answer is more like it's an experience of being younger and facing a piece that I like very much for the first time with a professional orchestra, and me being a bit too unexperienced, the orchestra not so good. This was many decades ago, so the level of the orchestra was so a little bit less here in Finland. And then the whole was acoustically very difficult.
Yeah.
And my choice is, which is musically one of my absolute favorites, the second movement of Brahms' Second Symphony.
Oh.
And when you try to put that machine together without really knowing how, and you enter this world of beating two large beats and adding your back to that, and not showing actually the beat that they could follow. So you feel that the orchestra is not doing this as I want, because they cannot read what you're doing. And it takes years before you understand that it was your fault and not their fault.
Absolutely true. When you said the second movement of Brahms 2,
this big machine where people sit long ways from each other, the distances, and if the hall is not supporting this, and
Yes, if it's a really dry hall and there's no bloom in the sound, or I nodded and I agreed and I shut my eyes and thought, my God, what a brilliant answer. Because, like you, I love Brahms too. I conducted it first with my amateur orchestra, the Symphony of Birmingham, about 20 concerts into my conducting career, and I've now conducted 859. I didn't conduct that symphony again because it burnt me for 20 years, Atso, because I couldn't. I wasn't good enough then. I think I can do it now.
I think so too.
But thank you.
Seeing
That's very
you
kind.
conduct, yes.
But when I started, my God, I did all the things you do. The beat was too big. I was throwing myself around into it, and I wasn't helping them at all. And I came away. I also had a similar experience with Beethoven's Eroica, but I immediately thought, no, I can do that. Yeah. And I immediately did what you fall off the bike, you get back on. I did with the Eroica, I got back on. With Brahms too, I thought, no, you wait until you're good enough. It's so hard.
I love youth orchestra work.
Yes, me too.
And I had the luxury of being invited. A good friend invited me to the Wiener Jeunesse, so the Austrian youth.
Yeah, in Vienna.
Symphony.
Yeah.
And it was Brahms second, and it happened in the concert house. And that was then the other way around.
Yes, there's a smile on your face.
Then the good memories and so. Yeah, but there's a thing that as a trombone player, it took me a while to understand from the Brahms Second Symphony what you understand as a violinist, that the scales that come in the end of the finale.
Yes.
Yum, pum, 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 tin, tum, 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 and then comes the high trombone, which could be played by alto, but everybody plays with the tenor trombone. So to hit that D, and then there it was. And then you hear the violins go pop, 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 even. Yeah. There's one more to come, but the trombones are so, it's like the scales are over. No, everybody is playing one more.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. So and then the strings go off on their quicker scales and afterwards. Yeah. It's amazing. Somebody starting out conducting, you want to find something hard to conduct the second movement of Brahms too. Absolutely correct. Yeah, that's so hard. Number 7, and as we've discussed, you didn't travel abroad too often.
Not much,
but still you did. Yeah.
I've a couple of concerts in China and
So when you traveled abroad, what item could you not leave home without?
There is again this, what was the end of the 24 hours of free time. It's a book.
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes now, because it's possible, I also accept that the book is downloaded into my phone, but it's still, for me, a book.
It's still a book, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And if you have many books, they don't weigh too much in that form, but I still prefer a paper book if I can manage with the luggage.
Number 8, real or fantasy, Atso, whichever you like. What is the one thing you would change about being a conductor?
I would like to have more possibilities to choose programs without economic hinders, without like people saying that we cannot do that, it's too large, we cannot do that because it's not selling to the audiences. So like having a possibility to do some more Szymanowski or the young Aulis Sallinen's First Symphony, which is a marvelous piece, stereophonic 20 minutes from year 72. Pieces like these, you have to so much say that, negotiate that if they fit the programs and so on, and the world is quite hard and there's not enough money for extra players and so take these restrictions away, and it would be really nice to make 1 year of programs like that.
Yeah. I often, when people say to you, "Oh, you must be like a child in a candy store. You can choose anything you like," and you go, "No, you can't." That's like,
No, you can't.
often there are whole areas of the shop roped off because you're not allowed to go in there because you don't have. You can't lay your hands on 6 to 8 horns. You can't have any more than 3 percussionists. We can't afford a harp that week. Or you think, well, actually, I would like to do this. Oh, well, we can't sell those. Nobody's buying those candies. Nobody wants to come and buy that. We'd love
And
you
also,
to. Yeah, go on.
From the top popular pieces, there's a list that we just had this.
Exactly. Yeah. And or no, you can't do that because our music director's doing that next year. Or that I remember one particular time, and I shall say the orchestra because Stephen Maddock was the chief executive there for 26 years, and he and I are good friends. And we sat down, and I went through a list of pieces I'd like to conduct in my subscription concert. And there were many, many, many barriers because we just swapped from Sakura Oromo to Andris Nelson's, and Andris had come up with the first 3 years of programs. We basically worked out there was only one symphony left of the popular repertoire of the entire symphonic canon that I could conduct because everything else was linked to something the week before, the week after, else in that series, or 2 or 3 years' time, or a tour, or a recording. And I ended up doing Mendelssohn's Third Symphony, the Scottish. That was the only piece left that I could do.
Luckily, it's wonderful.
It's a wonderful piece, and
yes.
it was a great concert. We got really good reviews, but sometimes that's what it is. You walk into a candy shop and think, I can have anything. No, you can't. There's only those 2 things over there you can do because of the situation. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Number 9, I have no idea what your answer for number 9 is going to be because you have been a successful teacher / professor and a composer and a conductor. So what profession other than your own would you like to have attempted?
My dream is to write a book for the next 10 years, a brick-sized 1,000 pages. Thing that I don't know how it's going to end when I start to write.
And are we talking a novel?
Yes, a novel. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
nothing to do with memoirs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy story.
A crazy story. And do you think one day you might start it, or?
I will name it. I have an idea. I will name it Peter the Ant's Coloring Book. And it will solve all the problems.
Oh, wonderful.
But I love writing. I write to newspapers and I write short stories and so on. And presentations.
Yeah.
So
I'm not surprised.
My father was a novelist and also a journalist, so it's part of my heritage.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. When we met 2 weeks ago, the immediate connection I could put, and I hope you find this as a compliment when I first met you and then when we spoke over the 2 or 3 occasions we met, was I found you very similar to Paavo Berglund, and the fact that you seem to have a love of language and a love of using words. Berglund, the favorite ones, and I steal it on a regular basis, is why you pizzicate so loudly. You invent new words. And I got the feeling with you that you love words and you love, even though English is not your first language, but you love discovering words and talking about words and you will stop yourself and reform a sentence, which I found very much like Paavo. And so I'm not surprised that you like writing at all.
There's another one from Leif Segerstam, which was that, how do we know when to stop? I will look at you stoppingly.
That's very good.
This is from the New Zealand page.
Yeah. Having played for Leif, I can hear him saying it. Yeah, absolutely.
Or I want to see some pencils, some lead sacrificed on paper. So mark this down.
Yeah, lead sacrificed. Oh, very good.
Yeah.
If the world were to end tonight, Atso, what would be your choice of final meal and drink?
I had to think about this because, first of all, would I be so terrified that I couldn't eat or drink or maybe take some pills to eat some pills. But then if I would be okay, I'm now soon 70 years old. So it means that in this age, you start to think about accepting that there's not so much time left as there's behind. And that living comes a little bit more grumpy. And so but that doesn't happen. It's part of life. So if we would have family and friends together and had a lovely evening, I would love a cold seafood platter, a big, all the lobsters, oysters, everything, lemon, vinaigrette, and then good white wine and good company and lots of philosophical talk. I think that would be a nice way to go.
What a great choice. Absolutely. As you said, with great company, lots of philosophical chat, but fresh seafood, very simply done with a bit squeeze of lemon or a vinaigrette and a crisp white wine. Absolutely perfect. And I know that the chat would be wonderful because, as I've said so often, I think we got on very well when we first met 2 weeks ago, and it's been wonderful to chat with you again for another 90 minutes today. So thank you for coming on the podcast, and I do hope to go back to Kuopio soon, and we'll sit down and chat some more. Thank you, Atso.
And thank you, Michael.
A Mic on the Podium was devised and produced by Michael Seal, with music by Ben Dawson. Next time, I chat with an English conductor who started his musical career as a violinist, leading professional orchestras from a very young age. He's held title positions in Norway, Sweden, Greece and the United Kingdom, and is currently Conductor Laureate and Artistic Advisor of the Charlotte Symphony Orchestra in the United States. But until then, bye-bye.